The concrete walls of the Mutant detention facility felt colder than usual as Lorna Dane sat in her cell, her fingers unconsciously reaching for the metal collar around her neck. The device hummed with a low electrical current, designed specifically to suppress her magnetic abilities. Every attempt to manipulate the metal around her resulted in searing pain that shot through her nervous system like liquid fire, leaving her gasping and disoriented. The collar was a masterpiece of anti-mutant engineering, titanium alloy reinforced with power-dampening circuitry that monitored her brainwaves and delivered increasingly painful feedback with each attempted use of her abilities. The prison guards had explained its function with sadistic pleasure. The more she tried to escape, the more it would hurt. "Fresh meat," sneered a voice from the corridor. A hulking prisoner approached Lorna's cell with a gang of followers, their faces bearing the hard lines of career criminals. "Listen here, metal girl. You might have powers on the outside, but in here I run the show. You follow my rules or things get ugly real fast." Lorna met the woman's gaze steadily, her green eyes flashing with defiance. "I don't follow anyone's rules." The confrontation escalated quickly during exercise time in the prison yard. The gang surrounded Lorna while other inmates formed a circle, eager for entertainment. The yard was deliberately constructed with minimal metal, plastic benches, concrete walls, and chain-link fencing designed to limit any magnetic manipulation. At first, she tried to avoid the conflict, backing away with her hands raised defensively. "Please," Lorna said, her voice steady despite the fear coursing through her. "I don't want any trouble. I just want to serve my time and get out." But when the leader struck her abdomen with calculated cruelty, claiming she wanted to test how strong the baby inside was, something primal awakened within Lorna. The protective instinct of motherhood overrode every rational thought, every survival strategy she had learned during her weeks of imprisonment. Rage flooded through her system, temporarily overriding the collar's suppression. With tremendous effort and excruciating pain, she managed to manipulate a nearby metal table, sending it crashing into her attacker and pinning the woman against the chain-link fence. The collar's feedback felt like being struck by lightning, but she held on long enough to end the threat. Guards rushed to break up the fight, dragging a bloodied but defiant Lorna to solitary confinement. Alone in the concrete bunker, blood trickling from her nose due to the collar's backlash, Lorna wept for the first time since her capture. Her name was Lorna Dane, though few knew her real identity. She was a mutant with the power to control metal at will, stopping bullets, moving cars, turning any metallic object into a weapon. But most importantly, she was pregnant with the child of the man she loved. Several days earlier, Lorna had been living underground with her boyfriend, Marcos Diaz, and a network of mutants helping their kind escape persecution. Their base of operations was a converted subway station, abandoned since the 1970s and perfect for hiding from government surveillance. The tunnels provided multiple escape routes, and the metal infrastructure gave Lorna's powers maximum effectiveness in defensive situations. When they learned that a young mutant named Clarice was being held by police, Lorna insisted on the rescue mission despite Marcos's concerns about her condition. "You're pregnant," he had argued, his hands gently touching her still flat stomach. "Let someone else take this risk." But Lorna was stubborn, driven by the memory of her own childhood, growing up afraid, hiding her abilities, watching other mutant children disappear into government facilities, never to be seen again. "No one gets left behind," she had declared. "That's what separates us from them." Her magnetic powers had made such operations routine in the past. She could disable weapons, manipulate metal restraints, and create diversions with any metallic objects in the environment. But this time was different. This time, the authorities were expecting them. The rescue itself went smoothly. Clarice's portal-creating abilities proved invaluable in their escape, opening dimensional rifts that allowed instant transportation across the city. But as they fled through the industrial district, police reinforcements arrived in overwhelming numbers. In the chaos, Marcos was shot by an officer, the bullet tearing through his shoulder and sending him sprawling across the asphalt. The sight of her lover bleeding in the street ignited something primal in Lorna. "You want to see what a mutant can really do?" she had screamed at the officer responsible, her voice echoing off the warehouse walls. Instead of escaping with the others, Lorna stayed behind for revenge. Her magnetic field had crushed the officer's weapon and flung him against a wall before the tactical team arrived with power-suppressing technology. A single shot from a specialized weapon had dropped her, the electric charge overwhelming her nervous system long enough for them to fit the collar. Now, imprisoned and separated from everything she cared about, Lorna struggled with desperation and the growing life within her. Each day brought new challenges, new humiliations, and the constant fear that the collar's effects might harm her unborn child. On the other side of the city, Reed Strucker sat in his prosecutor's office, reviewing case files that would determine the fates of dozens of captured mutants. The irony wasn't lost on him that many of these files involved mutant-related crimes, including Lorna's recent arrest. Reed had built his career on upholding the law, believing wholeheartedly in the system's ability to maintain order in a world where some humans possessed abilities that defied conventional understanding. His office walls were lined with commendations and photographs from successful prosecutions. Each case represented what he saw as a victory for human safety and social order. He had convinced himself that the harsh sentences and experimental detention programs were necessary evils, a way to protect innocent people from the inherent dangers posed by uncontrolled mutant abilities. That carefully constructed worldview shattered in a single afternoon when his son Andy was cornered by bullies in the school gymnasium. The attack wasn't random. These particular bullies had been targeting Andy for weeks, drawn by rumors that something was different about the Strucker family. In a moment of terror and rage, watching his classmates advance with malicious intent, Andy unleashed destructive mutant powers that brought down half the building in a cascade of twisted metal and shattered concrete. His sister Lauren revealed her own abilities by creating force shields that protected students from the collapsing debris, her powers manifesting as shimmering barriers of solid air that deflected falling concrete and twisted metal beams. "We have to run," Reed told his wife Caitlin that night, his hands shaking as he packed essential documents. "Sentinel services will come for them. They'll come for all of us." The family had no choice but to seek help from the very underground network Reed had been prosecuting. Through desperate phone calls and clandestine meetings, they connected with Marcos and his team. The plan was simple. Get the Strucker family across the border to Mexico, where anti-mutant laws were less severe, and they might have a chance at a normal life. But the operation went wrong from the start. Sentinel services discovered their meeting point and launched an assault with military precision. Johnny Proudstar and Clarice managed to evacuate most of the group through one of Clarice's portals, but Reed was shot and captured during the escape. The portal's extended distance severely weakened Clarice, causing random rifts to tear open across the city until Caitlin obtained medical supplies to stabilize her condition. Back in prison, Lorna's situation grew increasingly desperate. The collar's constant suppression was taking a physical toll, and she worried constantly about its effects on her unborn child. She made contact with another mutant prisoner, hoping to learn about the collar's weaknesses, but the woman was too frightened to help. "You're not the first to try breaking that thing," the prisoner whispered during their brief encounter in the shower area. "Keep your head down, or you'll make trouble for all of us. They've got ways of making it worse if you keep fighting." But keeping her head down wasn't in Lorna's nature. During a particularly brutal attempt to escape her cell, she managed to force the door open through sheer will and magnetic manipulation, but the effort left her unconscious and bleeding on the floor. The collar's feedback system was designed to increase in intensity with each use of mutant abilities, creating a cycle of pain and desperation. Meanwhile, Reed found himself sharing a cell with Lorna after his capture. The irony wasn't lost on either of them. The prosecutor and the defendant, now equals in captivity, both stripped of their former identities and reduced to being simply prisoners in the eyes of their captors. The cell was deliberately Spartan: concrete walls, a metal toilet, 2 narrow bunks with thin mattresses, no windows, no privacy, no dignity. Reed's expensive suits had been replaced with the same orange jumpsuit that Lorna wore, and his confident prosecutor's demeanor had given way to the uncertainty of a man whose entire worldview had been overturned. During their long hours of confinement, they talked, tentatively at first, then with growing openness as they realized their shared predicament. Reed learned about Lorna's childhood, spent moving from foster home to foster home as her magnetic abilities manifested and caused accidents that terrified her guardians. Lorna discovered that Reed's dedication to prosecuting mutants had been motivated not by hatred, but by genuine fear of what uncontrolled powers might do to innocent people. "I'm sorry," Reed said during one of their conversations, his voice heavy with the weight of newfound understanding. "I was just following the law. I didn't understand what we were really doing to innocent people until my own children manifested powers. Every family I helped separate, every child I sent to these facilities, I thought I was protecting society." Lorna's response was cold, but not entirely without sympathy. "Save your apologies for the mothers and children you helped separate. They're the ones who deserve to hear them. But Reed..." She paused, looking at him with eyes that had seen too much suffering. "Your kids are going to need you to be better than you were. They're going to need you to understand what it really means to be a mutant in this world." At the underground headquarters, a converted subway station hidden beneath the city, Marcos paced frantically while planning Lorna's rescue. The space was a maze of tunnels and abandoned platforms, transformed into a refuge for mutants fleeing persecution. Emergency supplies were stockpiled in hidden alcoves, and multiple escape routes had been mapped and tested over the years. Johnny Proudstar, a mutant with enhanced strength and tracking abilities, coordinated with Clarice and their hacker ally Sage to locate the transport convoy. His connection to the natural world allowed him to sense movement patterns across the city, while Sage's computer skills penetrated government databases to track prisoner movements. Caitlin Strucker, despite being human, had become an integral part of the team. Her medical knowledge proved invaluable for treating injured mutants, and her determination to save her husband matched Marcos's desperation to rescue Lorna. She had set up a makeshift medical bay in one of the old maintenance rooms, complete with stolen hospital equipment and black market medications. "We have one shot at this," Johnny explained to the assembled team, pointing to a map spread across a metal table. "The transport leaves at dawn. Plastic-lined vehicle, minimal metal for Lorna to manipulate, but if we can get her collar off..." Andy and Lauren Strucker, despite their parents' protests, insisted on participating in the rescue. Their combined abilities, Andy's destructive force and Lauren's protective barriers, could prove decisive. The siblings had been practicing in secret, learning to coordinate their powers in ways that amplified their individual strength. The plan required precision timing. As the convoy reached a predetermined point, Andy and Lauren worked together to blow out the transport's tires. The siblings discovered that their powers amplified each other in unexpected ways, their combined force far exceeding the sum of their individual abilities. The rescue operation faced an unexpected obstacle. Pulse, Johnny's former teammate who was presumed dead, appeared as part of the Sentinel Service's security detail. But Pulse wasn't a prisoner. He was working with their enemies, his eyes cold and distant in a way that Johnny had never seen before. "Pulse, what are you doing?" Johnny called out as their powers suddenly stopped working, the familiar sensation of his enhanced abilities simply vanishing. "They did something to you." Pulse's ability to disrupt electronic devices had been modified to suppress other mutants' powers in a wide radius. A strange tattoo on his forearm seemed to pulse with its own energy, the intricate pattern shifting and moving beneath his skin. Johnny noticed his friend's eyes were different, distant, as if he wasn't entirely in control of his own actions. "You chose the wrong side, Johnny," Pulse replied mechanically, his voice devoid of the warmth and humor Johnny remembered. "Mutants are a threat to human civilization. I serve a higher purpose now." The words sent chills through Johnny's spine. This wasn't the Pulse he had trained with, fought alongside, mourned for when he was presumed dead. Someone had taken his friend and turned him into a weapon against his own people. Only after Johnny managed to knock Pulse unconscious did the team's abilities return in a rush of restored power. Inside the transport, Reed and Lorna had been working together to escape their restraints. With Reed's encouragement, Lorna used metal fragments from an old surgical implant in Reed's leg, left over from a childhood sports injury, to overcome the guards and break free. The escape turned into a running battle through the streets, with Lorna using the guards' own weapons against them. Her powers, fueled by desperation and the need to protect her unborn child, seemed stronger than ever before, as if the pregnancy was somehow amplifying her abilities. Free but still hunted, the group struggled to understand what had happened to Pulse. Agent Turner, a Sentinel Services operative whose own daughter had been killed in a mutant-related incident, became obsessed with capturing them. His grief had transformed into a single-minded mission to eliminate what he saw as an existential threat to humanity. Turner's office was covered with photographs and news clippings documenting mutant attacks over the years. Each image represented a life lost, a family destroyed, a reason to continue his crusade. His daughter's photo sat prominently on his desk, a smiling 12-year-old who had been caught in the crossfire during a protest that turned violent. Dr. Campbell, a scientist working with Sentinel Services, revealed the existence of the Hound program, a project designed to modify captured mutants into loyal weapons. Pulse was just the first success in a program that aimed to turn the mutant community's own powers against them. "Imagine," Campbell explained to Turner during one of their meetings, his eyes gleaming with scientific enthusiasm, "an army of mutants who follow orders without question, their abilities enhanced by our modifications. We can end this threat forever." The underground team infiltrated a Sentinel Services facility and discovered files detailing the program's scope. The tattoos weren't just identification, they were part of a chemical and psychological conditioning process that stripped away free will and enhanced physical capabilities. The modification process was brutal, involving surgery, drug therapy, and psychological manipulation that left the subjects as little more than programmable weapons. Reed's investigation led him to his estranged father, Otto Strucker, a former employee of Trask Industries, the company responsible for much of the anti-mutant technology being used against them. The reunion was tense, filled with years of unresolved conflict and mutual disappointment. Otto's house was a monument to his career in genetic research, filled with scientific journals, laboratory equipment, and classified documents from his decades at Trask Industries. He had spent his life studying the X gene, but not to enhance it, to suppress it, to find ways to eliminate the mutant threat from within. Otto revealed a devastating family secret. He was a mutant who had spent decades working to suppress the X gene, motivated by fear of what his own descendants might become. His family had a dark history in the mutant world, one that he had desperately tried to prevent from repeating. Your great-grandfather and his sister, Otto explained, showing Reed old photographs of two young people who looked remarkably similar to Andy and Lauren. They called them the von Strucker twins. When they combined their powers, they could level city blocks. They led something called the Hellfire Club, a mutant terrorist organization that nearly triggered a war between humans and mutants. Andy and Lauren's abilities weren't just similar to their ancestors, they were identical. When the siblings joined hands, their combined power grew exponentially, becoming almost uncontrollable. Otto had spent his life ensuring this legacy would never resurface. I injected myself with a serum to suppress my X gene, Otto confessed, his voice heavy with regret. It worked for me, but the genetic markers passed to your children anyway. Andy and Lauren together are potentially the most dangerous mutants alive. The underground struggle became more complicated with the arrival of Esme Frost and her identical triplet sisters. Telepathic mutants from a wealthy family, they claimed to want to help destroy the Hound program. But their methods were more extreme than anything the underground had previously considered. The Frost sisters were elegant and sophisticated, their telepathic abilities allowing them to influence emotions and thoughts with subtle precision. They had resources that the underground had never possessed: money, connections, and a willingness to use violence to achieve their goals. "You're thinking too small," Esme told the assembled mutants during their first meeting, her voice carrying an almost hypnotic quality. "Rescuing individuals, hiding, running, that's not victory. That's just prolonging the inevitable. We need to strike at the heart of the system." The Frost sisters' plan involved infiltrating a political gathering where Dr. Campbell planned to demonstrate his enhanced mutants to government officials. The goal was assassination, eliminating key figures in the anti-mutant movement before they could expand their programs. Lorna found herself drawn to their philosophy. The pregnancy had changed her, making her more aggressive and determined to secure a future for her child. The collar's effects had also left her with lingering pain and a deep resentment toward the system that had tortured her. She began to see the underground's peaceful approach as naive and ineffective. The political event became a battleground where the future of mutant-human relations would be decided. Dr. Campbell had arranged for a demonstration of his Hound program assets, intending to show government officials that mutants could be controlled and used as weapons against their own kind. While Johnny, Clarice, and Marcos infiltrated the building to capture Dr. Campbell, the scientist proved more cunning than they anticipated. He used children as human shields, exploiting the team's moral constraints to escape through a service elevator. The Frost sisters were furious at what they saw as a failure, their telepathic abilities allowing them to influence the emotional states of those around them. During the evacuation, Sentinel services deployed their new combined power technology, using genetic material extracted from Andy and Lauren to enhance their mutant assets. The resulting assault nearly destroyed the underground headquarters, forcing a desperate last stand. Faced with overwhelming force, Andy and Lauren made a difficult decision. They convinced their parents to leave them behind while they used their combined abilities to destroy the entire building, ensuring no evidence remained for Sentinel services to exploit. "We have to do this," Lauren told her parents, tears streaming down her face. "Together, we can make sure they never use this place against other mutants." The siblings joined hands, and their combined power reduced the facility to rubble within minutes. The display of destructive force was witnessed by both sides, demonstrating exactly why the von Strucker legacy was so feared. Dr. Campbell's influence over the political system culminated in proposed legislation that would legitimize the use of enhanced mutants against their own kind. The scientist had survived the earlier attack and was now more determined than ever to implement his vision of mutant subjugation through technological control. Lorna made her choice during the final confrontation. As a transport plane carrying Dr. Campbell, the senator, and other anti-mutant officials prepared to leave for Washington, D.C., she accompanied the Frost sisters to the airport, her decision made in the depths of her anger and desperation. When Marcos, Johnny, and Clarice arrived to stop her, Lorna blocked their path with twisted metal barriers. Her powers, enhanced by the emotional and hormonal changes of pregnancy, had grown far beyond their previous limitations. The metal around her responded to her will with unprecedented precision and force. "Marcos, we've been hiding for too long," she called out to him, her voice carrying across the tarmac. "Running, rescuing individuals, trying to work within their system. It doesn't work. They'll never stop hunting us until we make them stop." Despite Marcos's desperate pleas, Lorna used her abilities to tear the aircraft apart in mid-air, killing everyone aboard in a spectacular display of magnetic force. The act of terrorism marked a point of no return for both her and the mutant community. In the aftermath, the underground network faced its greatest crisis. Lorna's actions had accomplished their immediate goal. The anti-mutant legislation died with its supporters, but the cost was enormous. Public opinion turned even more strongly against mutants, and Sentinel services launched a massive crackdown that made their previous efforts seem restrained. At a gathering of the surviving underground members, Lorna arrived with the Frost sisters and made her announcement: "The Hellfire Club is being reborn. For too long, we've tried to hide from humans to prove we're not a threat, but they'll never accept us as equals. It's time we stopped asking for acceptance and started demanding respect." The group split along ideological lines. Some mutants, exhausted by years of persecution and inspired by Lorna's show of strength, joined her cause. Others, including Johnny and Clarice, remained committed to the Underground's original mission of helping mutants escape persecution rather than fighting it directly. The most painful division came within the Strucker family. Andy, still reeling from the display of his combined power with Lauren and influenced by Lorna's arguments, chose to leave his family and join the Hellfire Club. "Dad, you've seen what we can do together," he said to Reed, his young face set with determination. "Lauren and I could end this whole war in a day. Why should we keep hiding when we could be building a world where mutants don't have to live in fear?" Reed tried desperately to reach his son. "Andy, that power comes with responsibility. Your great-grandfather thought the same thing, that mutants should rule instead of hide. It led to decades of war and suffering." But Andy was beyond persuasion. He walked away from his family, joining Lorna and the Frost sisters as they departed to begin building their new world order. The mutant community now faced an uncertain future, divided between those who sought coexistence and those who demanded dominance. Lorna's pregnancy progressed, and she spoke often of the world she wanted to build for her child, one where mutants would never again face the persecution she had experienced. The Underground continued its work, now led by Reed and Caitlin Strucker, alongside Johnny and Clarice. They maintained their commitment to helping mutants escape persecution, but their task had become infinitely more difficult. Lorna's actions had given the human authorities justification for even harsher measures. Marcos remained torn between two worlds, the woman he loved and the child they shared together, and the principles that had guided his life for years. Each day brought reports of Hellfire Club activities, and each day he wondered if there might still be a chance to reach Lorna before it was too late. The future remained unwritten, but one thing was certain: the age of mutants hiding in the shadows was ending. Whether the new world would be built through cooperation or conquest remained to be seen, but the choice between two very different paths had been made. The Underground would continue to save lives one at a time, while the Hellfire Club would reshape the world through force and intimidation. Lorna Dane, once a prisoner fighting for survival, had become a symbol of mutant resistance. and perhaps its greatest threat to the peaceful coexistence that others still hope to achieve.